in myself. Okay, great. So let's start with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanachhalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Radhanatha Swami Nityanamine Namaha Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishtarani Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dintaranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone for the Wednesday Bhagavad Gita session. So we are in our journey in chapter 17, Divisions of Faith. It's a very interesting chapter. We covered the first 6 verses, this chapter in our last conversation, in our last discussion. So I'd like to summarize that quickly and then go ahead and discuss further how the Lord elaborates this beautiful concept of the 3 modes. This chapter started with Arjuna's question as to, oh Lord, there are so many people who have some sort of a faith, who have some sort of a system of worship, but that system doesn't take reference of authorized teachings which come either from scripture or coming down from a bona fide self-realized spiritual master. So they are not following a proper authorized system, but they have some form of intrinsic faith, and driven by that intrinsic faith, which is a bit unguided, they engage in some kind of worship. So how do we understand this kind of faith? What is its nature? How is it to be categorized? So Krishna explains to Arjuna that yes, it is true that not that everything is either black or white. The perfection of execution of spiritual principles is to understand them from self-realized spiritual masters who have lived by those principles, realize those principles, and follow those principles as enunciated in the scriptures by the Lord and other realized souls, and adopt them and practice them in a way that we can actually realize the same principles for ourselves. That is the best method. That is the platform of white. And there is the platform of black, which is the other opposite, which is those who actually continuously work against the system. They are individuals who are totally opposed to the idea of authority. In fact, they are simply driven by as Krishna explains, lust, greed, anger. They are driven by their ego, they are driven by selfish desire. And for them, nothing else matters other than considerations of I, me, and mine. So that is the demoniac extreme. And fortunately or unfortunately, the world is not binary. What does that mean? It is not that if somebody asks you, are you divine or are you demoniac? So I'm very sure all of us here will say we are divine. Because if you're just given a 1 and a 0, yeah, which one would you choose? At least I would choose divine. I wouldn't want to call myself demoniac. Yeah, if that's the only choice I have, 1 and 0. But Arjuna is saying, Krishna, aren't there shades of grey? That yes, there is a perfect way to practice spirituality, and there are those who are totally abandoned all spirituality and moral, religious, spiritual considerations. But can you tell me something about those who are in the grey space? Because that is the reality of life. The challenge in life is, and the truth is, that none of us are either fully white or fully black. We are various shades of grey. And it doesn't even end there. It's not that, oh, I am 30% black and 70% white, and he is 20% black and 80% white. It's not even like that. From moment to moment, the shades change. As we evolve in life, different impressions, different experiences, we may move either on the darker side or on the lighter side, isn't it? And that is the reason, that is precisely the reason Krishna doesn't want to create permanent labels. Krishna introduces the concept of the three modes, the three gunas, in chapter 14 itself. The three modes of material nature, where he identifies Sattva guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna, mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. And Krishna emphatically declares to Arjuna, Arjuna, each person is a mixture of these three. So instead of saying black and white, last time when we discussed the 14th chapter, we gave the example of RGB, right? Or you can think of red, yellow, and blue if you want, three shades, three colors. And all colors are nothing but a different percentage of mixtures of these three colors, three primary colors. And then you get all kinds of shades, right from white to black and everything in the between, isn't it? And Krishna says everything in this world is a mixture of Rajogun, Sattvagun, and Tamogun. There are different percentages, and even for one individual, even though we may say he's prominently yellowish, for example, I'm just taking the example of colors. Sometimes he may move to the orange side, sometimes he may move to the brown side. So certain shades become prominent at certain points in their life. So life is complex. And a binary philosophy doesn't work. So we want a real approach to understanding life, to deal with it. Because if we have a too theoretical an approach, it's not going to help us to function and live in this world in a pragmatic way. We don't want to fool ourselves. And we don't want to go around labeling others. He's divine, he's demoniac, he's divine. It's not like that. It's very possible in certain areas of our life we are exemplary and divine. In certain areas of our life we are miserable. There can be an excellent lawyer who's very just when it comes to his practice of law as a judge. Let's talk about a judge. But at home, he may be an abuser of his own spouse. So is he good or is he bad? Yeah. So this is the reality. So Krishna doesn't want to discredit somebody and just put him in one basket and say that he's doomed forever because he doesn't meet this checklist item. But yes, there are so many aspects, so many dimensions. That's why when we discussed, even in the previous chapter, 16th chapter, divine and demoniac qualities, Krishna listed so many divine qualities. Krishna listed so many demoniac qualities. And again, we may have different percentages of marks against each of them. And again, when we add up all of them, we will reach a score. And actually, it's not just a simple score. Actually, it's a multi-dimensional thing, right? So it's not even as simple as that. So one aspect to learn is we should just avoid the temptation of label. So these understandings are more about giving us a sense of right direction. Okay, this is what we want to maximize. Yeah. And to identify, oh, these are the shades which I need to dim. And these are the colors or the hues which I want to push up. And that's a continuous, lifelong effort which we have to put in. So that was the concept Krishna introduced in chapter 14, and we have been developing on that more and more in 16. Divine and demoniac qualities were discussed in 17. Krishna is trying to explain the same concept of the modes from the perspective of faith and methods of worship. And it's quite amazing, isn't it? We are all from the Hindu tradition. Yeah. And we are all from various diverse backgrounds from the Hindu tradition also. Quite likely, I do not know each of your own spiritual backgrounds, but I'm sure, you're from different parts of India. That itself, is sufficient, for me to quite confidently conclude that you come from different traditions with different practices, sometimes even different values. And how many of those systems, worships, processes are actually aligned with perfect spiritual truth, aligned with proper scriptural understanding? Some principles may be, some may not be. Over time, so many corruptions have happened in so many practices. So there are so many things to be considered. And that is why in this particular chapter, this chapter itself is entitled Divisions of Faith. So one cannot say, I have faith, so it must be correct. A suicide bomber also has faith. So does a person who's doing genuine welfare work for so many people. So that's why Krishna is saying just having faith is not important. Faith must be reposed in the right understanding. And that is why the reference point of that right understanding is important. And Krishna refers to scripture and perfected souls. So scripture comes either from the Lord or from the words of perfected souls. And that is why that becomes the reference point. Because if you don't have a reference, and we as egoistic, bewildered, selfish entities try to define religion for ourselves, we mess it up big time. Because when we try to do that, when we ourselves are lost, it's going to be very difficult or very unlikely that we come up with an unbiased, honest, and a true view. That's why it is said, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The principles of religion are enunciated by the Lord and propagated by great souls who are in perfect alignment with Him. So Krishna starts in the early part of this chapter by responding to Arjuna by saying, yes, it's true, it's not binary. In fact, faith itself can be categorized based on the concept of modes that I've explained to you, Arjuna. Faith itself can be sattvic, faith can be rajasic, and faith can be tamasic, and all kinds of mixtures in between. So all colors are possible within faith. Black and white on the extremes and everything in the middle. You understand what I'm saying? That's what Krishna is. And so broad. It's such a, sometimes people think, actually our culture, our tradition is actually so broad, and that's why it accommodates everyone. Krishna is not even rejecting anyone. He's saying, I'm accepting from white all the way here. All I want is motion from black towards white. All I want is progress. And different people, based on their situation, are gradually moving upwards. But at least one must have recognition that faith itself is also not static. Faith itself also evolves, becomes deeper, becomes more profound, becomes more aligned with universal values, because our values and universal values may not coincide at our level of evolution. Gradually we move towards, and that is the whole idea of yoga, getting in sync with the universe. I'm painting the bigger picture so you don't lose sight of what we are trying to discuss. And Krishna says the faith that a person has is based on the composition of the gunas that that person has is made of. So if a person is a particular combination of the modes of sattva, raja, tama, then the faith that he will develop will also be accordingly affected to that proportion based on the combination of the modes that he has acquired. If a person is predominantly in goodness, his faith will also be of the nature of goodness. And then Krishna goes on to say that when we talk about faith and the three broad divisions of faith, sattva, raja, tama, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the other aspects or expressions of faith, which can be characterized as things related to food. Food is also closely associated with faith. Yajna, sacrifice, tapa, austerity, and dana, charity. Because all religious processes, somehow or the other, combine these four aspects. We discussed that also last time. Food, there are so many belief systems around food and what kind of food. And in India, there is so much chaos nowadays about certain kinds of food. Anyway, we don't want to go into the politics of all that. But you see, so each belief system is associated with its own concepts around the food, around the kind of yajna or the sacrifice that is to be done. This includes the kind of rituals, the worships, austerities, what kind of observances, vows. Currently, Navaratri is going on. There are so many austerities of fasting which is going on. At the same time, in the Muslim tradition, there is the Ramzan month which is going on in parallel. And that's also creating some problems in some places. Because again, the modes are different, the beliefs are different. When different systems have different modes, people or followers who are in different modes also, there is somehow this belief that one has to artificially bring a person from one mode to follow something which is another mode. But Krishna says, no. You follow the principles based on the modes that you are situated in. And that is why the teachings of Gita, Sanatan Dharma, the Vedic system is actually so broad. It doesn't even try to box or limit one into one particular system. It does point to the highest and say, what is the highest? But it gives the space for the individual to go slowly from black towards white. It doesn't say if you are not white now, if you don't follow all the aspects of white, you are out. So it gives a whole framework and it gives systems at different levels. And that is why Krishna says, please understand all these types of faith and the various expressions that they have in terms of food, in terms of methods of worship or yajna, in terms of austerities. Austerities are basically do's and don'ts. You have to do this, you don't have to do that. Right? and charity, because there's some kind of giving also involved in various religious systems. Krishna says that also goes into different guna buckets. So faith as well as food, yajna, dana, tapa. And then for many subsequent verses, Krishna analyzes what is the meaning of food in the three gunas, what is the meaning of yajna in the three gunas, what is the meaning of dana and tapa in the three gunas. So that's what we are going to discuss. Let's see how far we get. It's a very interesting topic. But I like to paint the bigger picture so you don't get lost. Otherwise, if you just try to by heart the definitions, you will not understand why Krishna is explaining what he is explaining. So let's go into the topic of food, because food is our favorite topic. Always. I was in a session yesterday. It was a training session, and somehow the trainer mentioned something about food. The topic was not food. Mentioned about food, and he then went on to discuss something else which was on the subject. And in the chat, everybody is discussing about food. And the trainer said, "Hey, how come the discussion came to chicken biryani? What am I discussing and what are others discussing in the chat?" And then he realized, oh, I made some reference to some food item that I like, and everybody started discussing what they like. So food is a hot topic of discussion. And understandably so, because that's something which all of us can relate to, all of us enjoy. The easiest way to seek pleasure is the tongue. So Krishna says that even the food, let me quickly read that verse, we are on text 7. So the verse goes like this. This is the Lord speaking. Aharastvapi sarvasya trividho bhavati priyah yajna tapas tatha danam tesham bhedam imam shrunu. So before he goes into food, he says that even the food each person prefers is of three kinds, according to the three modes of material nature. So based on the modes one is situated in, one prefers a particular kind of food. The modes influence our attraction towards a particular kind of food. The same is true for yajna, sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Now hear from me the distinctions between them. So now Krishna is going to go into the details. So first thing is, Krishna is saying faith as well as various kinds of yajna, dana, tapa are also all not the same. The various kinds of systems usually fall into somewhere between the black and white. Isn't it true that even within the religious systems, there are certain religious systems, probably not mainstream religions, but there are some religious systems or maybe some tribal systems which are extremely demoniac, right, in their practice. So obviously, we cannot say that, oh, all systems are also equal. And there is a categorization based on the modes. So let's talk about food. So Krishna starts by explaining what kind of foods are dear to those who are in the mode of goodness. So what kind of foods are dear to a person who is in the mode of goodness are goodness foods. Understand it like that. Ayu sattva balarogya sukha priti vivardhanaha rasyaha snigdaha stiraridhya aharaha satvika priya. What kind of ahara are satvika priya? For those who are sattvic people, What do they love? What do they really want? Actually, if you want to find out what modes of material nature a person is, all you have to do is take them to a huge buffet lineup and see where they run first. Because I'm assuming they are not on diet and they can eat everything. And you can see which counter will they run to first. So foods dear to those who are in the mode of goodness, sattva guna. So Krishna describes, I'll just read the translation, then we'll discuss on this a bit. Foods in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life. What does that mean? Those kind of foods are healthy for the body. Increase the duration of life, they're healthy for the body. Purify one's existence. What does purify one's existence mean? They're also healthy at a mental, emotional level. They're purifying your existence. They're not just calorie-wise good. They are nutrition-wise good also, and they are good for your mind also. They give strength, calories. They give health, nutrition, and they give happiness, the mind, and satisfaction, emotion. They take care of all aspects of the self. See, this is one wrong idea that people, this is such a misunderstanding, and sad that nowadays people think of diet only in terms of calories. And this whole diet industry has just made it so bad. Just count calories. No. But nowadays, nutritionists have started saying calories by themselves don't mean anything. Nutrition is important. But Bhagavad Gita says, no, that's okay. Calories and nutrition both are important, but go a little deeper. Food, whatever you intake, is not just making up your body. It is not just making up your gross body, it's also making up your subtle body. The subtle aspects of the food are making up your mind stuff. They are affecting your thinking body. They are affecting your emotions. They are affecting all that also. Who's making that kind of an assessment? Is medical dietary science making that assessment? No. They go only as far as nutrition. Calories and nutrition. Nutrition means proteins, vitamins. That's all. But Krishna says, no, that's a very gross assessment. That's okay. I mean, that aspect is not important, but don't stop there. Because when we talk about health, Krishna has given health at different levels. Strength, the calorie side. Health, the proper functioning of the body, which is the nutrition aspect, because body requires carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, everything in a particular proportion. And happiness, how it is giving an effect to your mind. What is the emotional state that the body is placing you in? Is it making you satisfied and happy? That's very important. How many of us think about food like that? How many of us, before ordering a food, think about, is this going to make me strong, healthy, happy, and satisfied? Krishna says when all four are ticked, that is sattvic food. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. So essentially, if you read through all that, it means wholesome means it is very nutritional, wholesome, and it is juicy and fatty. Essentially means that it is fresh. So Prabhupada in the purport explains that in this category, essentially fresh vegetables, salads, grains, milk and milk products, all these come into this category of Rasya, Snigdha, Sthira, Ridya. Juicy, fatty, enduring, and pleasing to the heart. This is very interesting. Now just think about this. This is important. I'm going to go a little slow on this topic because food is very nice to discuss. So let's discuss a bit more about food. No hurry. And this is very important because this is one thing, food and drink. When I talk about food, ahara means everything that goes inside. So liquid as well as solid food, everything that we consume is ahara. Because the simple point is whatever goes inside, from there only certain things are assimilated and they make up what we see as our body, both gross and subtle, isn't it? So actually we should be so careful about what we put in. Just like in an engine of a car, based on the quality of petrol we put, the engine will work accordingly. So food in the mode of goodness is like what we discussed, fresh fruits, vegetables, grains, and milk. Let's discuss also items which are in the other modes, and then we can have a more holistic discussion. So those who are in the mode of goodness prefer these foods which are actually pleasing to the heart. Now, I just wanted to mention this one thing. Sorry, I just went off my mind, now came back again. What I wanted to mention is, regarding sattvic food, I just want you to remember in your own mind those days, some of those days when there was some puja at your home, or you went to the temple or a religious function and ate a very wonderful, pure vegetarian meal. And perhaps even better, a meal which was offered to the deity, and then you ate that. And if you can just recollect the feeling that you had in your own heart after you had completed that meal. How many of you can recollect that even though that food may not be necessarily the tastiest in terms of the appeal to the taste buds, it was so pleasing to the senses, the body, the digestive system, and the mind. So at the end, when you are done, and hopefully if you are not overeaten, it feels so nice. Because this feeling of overeating is, a terrible feeling which spoils everything else. No matter how, and overeating is rajagun. That is why even if you eat sattvic food, if you overeat, it becomes rajasic. So if you are wondering why I'm not feeling wonderful even though I ate sattvic food, the reason is you made it rajasic by overeating. Let me tell you upfront so that you don't blame me. Oh, Prabhuji told sattvic, why I'm not feeling good? It's because you've overeaten. So if you eat in moderation and if you eat sattvic food, you will feel very nice, very satisfied, very happy. You'll feel in a good, cheerful mood. And you can recollect those days when there was some puja and you ate, the food was cooked for the puja, and then after that, after the puja, the ceremony, the yajna, the function, you ate. I remember even in marriages, when I was a young boy, when I would attend marriages, there was a culture of making sattvic food and offering it to the deity, and then everybody would sit down and eat the sattvic food. Nowadays you have caterers, who line up I don't know what kind of food. And even though you may find that food more appealing to your taste buds, if you try to recollect the feeling that you have in your heart after you eat a very spicy meal in a restaurant, and the feeling that you have after eating food after a puja, how many of you can recollect the difference? Anybody wants to raise your hands or do a thumbs up? Can anyone relate to what I'm saying? Yes. Okay, Kalyani is doing a thumbs up. Amit and Bhaskar are also. Okay, I can very clearly recollect the emotional and overall well-being experience. And I'm talking about well-being at all the levels that Krishna mentioned, right? The body, the strength-wise, health-wise, happiness-wise, and emotional satisfaction-wise. Just analyze next time. You please, if you haven't done this exercise in a very conscious manner, please do it next time, and you can share your experience. Krishna says it will be wonderful for you. Yes, thank you, Snehaji. She's also confirming. So quite a few of you have mentioned. So that is a fact. Now Krishna mentions what is Rajasic food. Now this is going to be interesting. So let's see what is Rajasic. Katva amla lavanati ushna ikshna ruksha vidahinaha ahara rajasasyesta dukkha shokamaya pradaha. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning are dear to those in the mode of passion. Let's analyze this before we go to the next sentence in the translation. So, the sum and substance of what Krishna is saying is Rajasic food means extremes in taste. Sattvic food can also have something bitter. It's not that Karela by itself is a problem. But if something is too bitter, if there's an extreme which causes a strong reaction in the senses, an extreme can be too spicy. Something is too spicy. Rather than becoming pleasurable, it gives misery. Misery not just to the body, but also to the mind. How many of you have experienced when you sometimes eat a very spicy vegetable, your tongue is enjoying it at one level, you cannot stop eating it, but at the same time you are sweating because it's so spicy. At the same time, your body and your stomach is feeling so acidic because it is so oily and spicy. But still you can't stop. You're eating because you just are enjoying that extreme taste. And after eating, you're just feeling yucky because you're feeling so from inside, burning sensation is being experienced. Everybody is excited and raising their hand. This has been my consistent experience when I go and eat outside, anywhere. Of course, nowadays I don't eat beyond a vegetarian restaurant, but otherwise also, even within vegetarian, actually, it doesn't mean that vegetarian cannot be Rajasic. Extreme tastes, even in vegetarian food, is Rajasic. And this is typically in restaurant foods you can experience it. And that is why you can consistently experience, like what Krishna says in the second line of this verse. He says, such foods cause distress, misery, and disease. Extremes in taste. Balance is sattva. Extreme is Rajasic. Extremes in taste. And extremes maybe giving you a more exciting feeling on your tongue, but it's not good for the system. And that is why it gives disease, it gives distress, and actually causes misery. So, Amit shared something with me in the chat. He's saying simple Gujarati thali seems sattvic. And he's saying Mughalai food seems Rajasic. Okay, we'll do that analysis later. Again, I hope nobody is offended by any labels. We are here students of spiritual science. So actually, within every cuisine, at least in India, I can say, in some other countries, for various reasons, their food is oftentimes very hard to find sattvic items. But at least within the Indian context, every state in India has a very good cuisine of good sattvic food. The Marathis have very good sattvic food. The Gujaratis have. The Punjabis also have. It's just that nowadays certain cuisines are more popular in restaurants with high spicing. but those are more the commercialized versions. But within every, almost every state or every state cuisine or sub cuisines therein, you will find a set which has the sattvic characteristics. I love Kerala, the Kerala sattvic food, the one they serve on Onam, the Onam Sadhya. Oh, it's so wonderful. The Tamilians amongst the Ayyars, Iyengars, they have such a wonderful sattvic cuisine. It's amazing. Goa, Konkan area, Gujarat, Rajasthan has such wonderful sattvic food. And this is true for all. I'm just naming a few based on my own experience with cuisines. I haven't traveled so much. Bengal has a wonderful vegetarian cuisine as well. Orissa, Jagannath Puri, if you have eaten Jagannath's prasad, of course, that prasad is not just sattvic, it is beyond sattvic because it is spiritual. But the basic meal is of the sattva type. Jagannath's prasad, if you eat, I do not know how many of you know, they say, it is said that they don't even put salt. They use the natural salt from the various ingredients that come. Or even if they use at all, I'm not 100% sure, it is very, very little, if any. So they use ingredients, they try to bring the taste through a lot of the natural tastes that come from vegetables and use minimum spices. And still it tastes so wonderful. How many of you have eaten Jagannath's Mahaprasad? I'm talking about the meal, not just the khaja. The rice, dal, the sabjis, then the sweet. Anyone? Raise your hands, and if anybody has. I'm sure some of you have. Yes, Sarva Lakshmi Mataji has. She went with us. We had it together once. If you have not, you should have. When you go to Puri, you should. Oh, so amazing. And then you wonder, how come this food is so satisfying, even though it is nowhere close to the highly stimulating food that we are used to eating. It's so amazing. Such a different feeling. And you get up from that seat feeling so enlivened, so happy, so satisfied. And that's what food is supposed to do for us. It is supposed to energize us. So Rajasic food, the basic point about Rajasic food, it is only pleasurable at the tongue level. Other than that, it creates a mess. It's not actually healthy for the body. From a nutrition perspective also, it causes distress at a mental level because of the extremes of the taste. And eventually, this kind of extreme taste eventually result in disease. Correct, isn't it? I mean, if you have too spicy food, you will have ulcers. Those who eat too much chilies. If you have too much sweets, you'll get disease. You'll get diabetes. If you have too much salt, you'll get hypertension. Is it not? Right? So excessive. Any excess, that's why Krishna says yoga is about balance. We don't have a problem with variety. We don't have a problem with taste. We don't have a problem with sugar. We don't have a problem with salt. We don't even have a problem with chili. If you use everything in moderation, in a way that it brings taste, but is not causing distress or disease and misery, then it is still sattvic. Okay. Now for the last item, which is the most interesting, what is in the tamogun then? So sattvagun is balanced and pleasing, healthy at all levels. Rajogun is mostly pleasurable at the taste level, but because of excessive strong taste, it actually causes distress, pain, misery, disease at a physical level also and also at a mental level. Tamogun, Krishna says, Yatayamam gatarasam uti paryushitam chayat uchchishtam api chamedhyam bhojanam tamasapriyam. What do tamasic people enjoy? What is tamasa priyam? Tamasa priyam is tamasic food because that is the nature. What are they attracted to? I'll read the translation first and then we'll understand. Foods prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten. Food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid. And food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. Now, after reading this, some of you will say, I have no idea what is spoken about. Yeah, so let me demystify what Krishna is saying, because the terminology used is in the context of how certain items were classified at a particular age. But let me make it simple. What Krishna is saying is food which is stale is tamasic food. Food which is tasteless is also tamasic food. So taste is not bad. Taste extremes is rajasic, balanced taste is sattvic, tasteless is tamasic. Another item which is tamasic is decomposed and putrid. Now you may be wondering what do you mean by decomposed and putrid? Who eats decomposed and putrid? But the thing is, those who are in deep tamasic gunas are somehow attracted to certain items. So here the reference mainly of decomposed and putrid and untouchable things, which Krishna mentions, is essentially referring to decaying flesh. So it's essentially referring to eating non-veg food, because that comes in the category of decomposed and putrid. Because as soon as the body is killed, the soul leaves, the body immediately starts decaying. We may try to refrigerate it and do whatever to preserve it longer to slow the decomposition, but the decomposition steps in. So dead bodies are always in the mode of ignorance. So decomposed and putrid is referring to meat, eggs, fish, and untouchable things. And putrid, this also includes liquor, because liquor is also a kind of fermentation which comes in this category of putrid and untouchable. And also food which are remnants. What does this mean? Remnants means if somebody has eaten their uchishta, is eating food which is already touched or eaten by somebody else. I think you're all from an Indian background, almost all of you. So I don't think I have to explain this further. But if somebody is eaten from a plate, we don't want to eat from the same plate because we fear that there is an infection. And from the perspective of Gita, we are not even only talking about infection from a disease perspective. Oh, he has COVID or he doesn't have COVID. I'm worried. I don't know whether I'll get it. Yes, that is true at one level. Communicable diseases, whether we are going to be infected, that is true at one level. But Krishna is talking at a deeper level also. Because Gita is talking about infection not just at a bodily level. It's talking at an infection at the mind level, at an emotional level, at a spiritual level. So if the food is tamasic, then it's also going to affect us in a tamasic way. The tamasic quality will affect also our mind, our emotions. So net, Krishna is saying those foods, basically liquor, non-vegetarian foods, remnants, and stale foods. These are the four in broad categories. That is why even vegetarian food, if it becomes too stale or starts decomposing, why the 3 hours is mentioned, in case you're curious, obviously, you want to eat fresh. Typically, if we keep it out and it remains, it starts decomposing. Even vegetarian food decomposes. Not that vegetarian food will not decompose at all. Maybe a bit slower than the non-veg food in terms of the decomposition, but well. So once it starts decomposing, we cannot have. There are certain food items which are deliberately fermented and decomposed. Sattvic cuisine doesn't accept that food. It places it in the tamasic category. Just for your information. I don't want to make you paranoid about this, but I just, from a strict classification perspective, fermentation is not a sattvic process. It is a tamasic process. That's why you will rarely see actual breads offered in temples. You will see chapatis. Chapatis is fine because there's no fermentation. So when you start analyzing, then you will see where some of these things of what you can and what you cannot, from where it comes from. Okay, so we have discussed broadly about the types of food. We are almost there. We are almost completed our time. So I want to just open up the floor. I just want to very quickly summarize. I'm going to open up the floor if any one of you has any questions. The next verse. The next verse is going into sacrifices. So we have completed the food section. So we have just completed 7, 8, 9, and 10 today, 4 verses. That's good enough. So let me quickly summarize so you get understanding. Okay, I think we don't have much time. Let's start with the questions. Never mind. We can summarize it. Amit, you want to ask yours first?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So just to clarify on that 3-hour thing. So, the food is essentially food in the mode of goodness as per the definition. And, there is some food that is left. We keep it in the fridge and have it in the night or the next day. Then that becomes food in the mode of ignorance. Is it the same food?
Yeah. So by putting in fridge, what we do is we delay the decomposition time, right? So here 3 hours, of course, Bhagavad Gita doesn't mention the verse doesn't mention 3 hours, right? Prabhupada puts that in the translation because that was the normal convention followed within the Vedic times, because in those days, there wasn't the system of preservation by artificial means like refrigeration. Yeah. So the general understanding is that for vegetarian items also, for cooked items, not for raw items, for cooked items, after 3 hours, the decomposition process sets in. It is not that immediately it becomes uneatable, right? But the window is 3 hours, we still consider it fresh. And after 3 hours, it sets in. So after 3 hours, you can start calling it stale if it is not preserved. Of course, artificial preservation itself is also not considered very good. I'm not very learned on that topic to give much commentary, but basically what I've heard is even the artificial preservation from a guna perspective is not sattvic. So the best is cook as much as we need for that meal, offer it to the Lord and eat the prasad, and then cook a full fresh meal next time. I know for urbans, it is very, very difficult, yeah, to do that. And I also cannot claim that, I am fully practicing that. I have to be honest. But at least what we can do is to try to bring in as many elements of sattvic food as possible, and at least not eat decomposed food. I mean, that is the least we can do. And avoid storing food beyond a day, to be honest, even in fridge. Please don't deep freeze curries and vegetables for a week and then have little every day. All that is, actually mode of ignorance. Okay. I think Amit.
Thank you, Babuji.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Amit. Suraj, you want to go next?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Food in the mode of goodness, right? So does it mean that we have to offer it to God first?
When you offer it to God, first thing is Krishna has already said Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, that you can only offer sattvic food to God. Point number 1. Okay. But when you offer sattvic food to God, because God doesn't eat rajasic and he doesn't accept, because he can eat if he wanted to, but he doesn't like rajasic and tamasic. That's what he states in the Bhagavad Gita. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya parayachati. Says, whoever offers me with love sattvic food, bhaktya, that I accept and I make it my prasad. So when sattvic food is offered to God with devotion, God infuses his grace, prasad means grace, into that food. And then that food doesn't just become sattvic food or remain sattvic food. It becomes prasad food, which is beyond sattvic.
Okay.
And that is why we call it spiritual. Yes. So it is beyond sattvic. So for food to be spiritual, first of all, it has to be sattvic. That is the basic requirement. But when sattvic food becomes offered to the Lord, it becomes prasad.
The other question,
Yeah.
we as a parent, before getting this knowledge, right, we used to eat non-veg. But then we realized at some point of time that it's not good for us spiritually and health-wise, and we quit non-veg. Now what is happening is kids don't want to quit non-veg. So at this point of time where parents have quit non-veg, kid still does not want to quit non-veg, who is getting that karma, Prabhuji? Because we as a parent started that process, right? Yeah.
What do you think is the answer?
Yeah, you told me about the KFC thing, right? But still, I want some clarification.
Okay,
The owner of
different.
KFC started.
is, yeah. So the principle is, yes. See, if we have a responsibility in any decision, as a general principle, if we have a responsibility, if there is any complicity in an activity, then the karma is shared to the extent there is complicity. So Shastra, I'll say, because we have want to take a reference of Shastra. Shastra says, in the context of food, especially food which is considered violent food. Violent food means where there is a taking of life. Of course, there is karma in every food. Krishna already says, even in killing a plant, there is some karma. There is some pain in the plant, but that's much lesser than the amount of violence which is there in a more sentient, highly evolved body, like a goat or a hen or a cow. It's very evolved. So scripture says that there are 6 persons or 6 roles who get affected by the karma. Okay? So I'll tell you the 6 roles. You see which of them apply to you. So it says, I'm trying to recollect. I hope I can recollect all 6. The one who cooks the food, okay. The one who serves the food, the one who eats the food. See, okay. Cooks, serves, eats. The one who buys the food, the one who transports the food, and if I'm not wrong, the one who arranges or stores, something like that. There's one more. Somebody has the verse handy, and let me know. So anybody who's involved in that value chain, from the point of procuring that animal, storing that animal, selling, buying, transporting, actually killing, cutting, cooking, serving. If you are involved anywhere in that process, basically you have enjoyed or arranged for that to happen, right? In some form or the other. Then you share that proportion in the violence of that. Correct. So as parents, obviously, if the food is there, then obviously, the child is not cooking. You are cooking, you are buying. So you may not be eating. So that part you are escaping, but the other parts you are still responsible. Correct? See, I cannot say the simple logical principle of justice is, I cannot say I gave a gun to somebody else to kill, I'm not responsible for the crime because he pulled the trigger. The judge will say, you procured the gun, you gave the bullet. So you are also responsible. You understand the logic. Right?
Yeah, but one clarification, Prabhuji. Now that I don't eat non-veg, nor I promote, I'm not involved in any of these 6 things.
For
Okay.
yourself. For yourself.
Yeah, for myself and my, but still, sorry to take them, still my kid eats. So how that karma is accounted?
Yeah. So okay. So I'll answer
So
first from
I don't involve any of these things.
Okay, good. So that is the good part. Again, I don't want to scare anybody on this this thing, but I'll tell you the principles, and you can see what you can apply. So scriptures say until the child grows up and is under your care, you are still responsible for their actions. Okay? Once they grow up beyond a particular point, and that is also progressive, especially after 12, 13 years and above, then they have some independence, they have some ability to decide, so that is less. But once they grow up, as they grow up more and more, they become independent and they decide on their own, and you become less liable. So as long as they are dependent on you, the principle is your responsibility is more. So that's one. But I think more than worrying so much about the mathematics of the calculation, I wouldn't be too absorbed in, what I think is, as parents, if we make an effort to train our children in the positive aspects of life, if we help them inculcate the habits to appreciate the benefits at all levels, at taste level, at health level, of good, tasty, fresh vegetarian food, especially prasad. When there is a very nice, tasty option available, then to give up something lower is easier. Raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. That's the principle Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. He says there are so many things attractive, materialistic things attractive in this world. But when a person experiences the higher taste, then it becomes possible to give up the lower taste. So my general encouragement to parents is give such nice, even within Sattvic, you can make so tasty items. If you go to Govinda's restaurants, there is such a huge spread of so many tasty Sattvic items and prasad, which are also prasad. So it is very much possible to have extremely tasty, gratifying Sattvic food. So what we should do on our side is to make an effort to, as parents, to make that available to our children, and then when they have so much option or facility to satisfy their taste buds at home, and when then you educate them that this is not in your best interest to eat food which is more karmically incriminating for you, then they will be more inclined to follow your advice. For example, a very simple thing, right? For those parents who tell their children to observe Ekadashi but don't cook nice Ekadashi food, the children will say, I don't want to follow any vrata. I want to eat something nice. Give me something nice to eat. And that's a problem for the parents to solve, isn't it? Because they are not going to cook for themselves. You have to cook. So if you give them nice options of eating healthy, sattvic, Ekadashi prasad, and there is so much, but that requires a little bit of effort to learn those recipes and make those items. That then, my children have been, my elder one is already 18, my younger one is 16. They have always been eating Ekadashi prasad. They only eat sattvic prasad. Even, because they have, and they never feel tempted, because we made it a point that, my wife is a very good cook and she makes a lot of variety, and we make sure that, because it's important that the senses are satisfied. If they're not satisfied, they'll create havoc. So Krishna is also very realistic in that regard. That's why Krishna says repression cannot accomplish anything. One has to replace a lower taste by a higher taste. Then only transformation is sustainable. You understand what I'm saying? And this is a general principle for all aspects of life. We must replace the lower with a higher. And that is why gradually one develops that taste. So I will implore, don't get too worried about just the karmic part. Focus on the positive aspects of how you can encourage the dependents to appreciate the taste for this, inculcate in them the proper spiritual principles, and I'm sure with the right approach, they will themselves be able to take the decision for them. Because how long are you going to watch out for them, right?
Yeah.
If you don't adopt the right approach, they are going to just lie to you, no matter what you tell them. And eventually, when they grow up beyond a particular age, they will care a damn, right? So,
Yes.
so as parents, our job is to instill the right taste, instill the right values, and control to some extent to a particular point, but beyond a particular point, they have to take that decision. So we help them take the right decision. You understand? That is the principle of long-term change.
And the project, one last thing,
Yeah.
when we are in the mode of goodness, right?
Yeah.
The change happens at gross level or subtle level first. I mean, our body gets cleansed first, or
No, it's a simultaneous process. It's a simultaneous process. When we eat sattvic food, it affects our mind and body simultaneously. Because we have to understand the food we eat also has a gross and a subtle aspect linked with it, just like our body has a gross and subtle aspect, right? So it is very, you can't draw a line between them.
Got it.
Correct? You just think about it. When you eat something fresh and tasty, and you eat it, your body will feel immediately nice, and your mind will also feel immediately nice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, truly, it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other point or any other comment? Okay. So thank you all very much. Sorry, we went a little bit extra, but I hope this discussion was useful. Sorry, somebody raising their hand? All right. Okay. So again, just a quick reminder before we disperse. Sunday is Ram Navami. This coming Sunday 10th. So like we said, on Saturdays, we usually discuss Srimad Bhagavatam at 9 p.m. But this Saturday, just a gentle reminder again, we'll be discussing something about Lord Ram on Saturday. And Sunday, like what we discussed, you can observe Ram Navami. It's fasting till noon. And wherever you are, you can go to the temple and do your worship either at home or in the temple and participate in the festivities. It's very auspicious. So we'll discuss something about Lord Ramchandra on Saturday 9 p.m. Just a reminder that that's okay. So next Wednesday, of course, we will continue with Bhagavad Gita and progress in chapters. Okay, thank you all very much. Nantara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you and have a good evening and a good day.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vrinda Priya Mataji. Hare Krishna. Sneha ji, Shraddha ji. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Kalyani, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for your rare encouragement. Suraj, thank you. Give my regards to your family. There is Mihira today. I don't see her.
Yeah, Hira is here probably.
Where she went? One second. Let me go to the gallery view. I suddenly lost you. Mihira heard everything we discussed. You're talking.
Hira is next to me.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So you both have to help each other come to the right standard. But no worries. Actually, if we have the right philosophical understanding, and if we have the right setup at home, then transforming habits to become positive is not actually so difficult. Over time, everything is possible. You must have a sincere effort. And when we are regularly doing sadhana, regularly studying spiritual literature, then of course the change becomes.
Yeah, that is what Mihira is doing, Prabhuji, but still somewhat.
She is a great devotee. Somewhat, no, somewhat all other small things will go away. Correct, Meera?
Yes, Prabhuji.
She said yes means that she has to say yes. She said yes, then everything will happen. She says no and you say yes, then I will not believe. But she's saying yes. So this is the important part. Okay. Thank you all very much. Anand Sundari Mataji, Vaskar Prabhu, Sachi Prema Mataji, Sapna ji,
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Archana, Leela ji. Thank you all, everyone. Sneha ji, Shraddha ji, Sini ji,
Hare
Hare Krishna. Where's
Krishna.
Rishikesh?
Yeah, he's here.
Rishikesh, show me your face. I want to see your face.
Come here.
Hare Krishna. Now I can see. How are you, Rishikesh?
Fine, Prabhuji.
Very good. Rishikesh is a wonderful devotee. He chants regularly, he eats Krishna Prasad, he worships the Lord. Correct? Rishikesh has been attending my classes for how many years now? 4 or 5 years?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, since he was very young. Yeah, and not only him, so many children here actually. Right? We have Hamsini here, Shivavarshini here, and so many others.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes,
I would like to
Neela.
introduce my son here.
Hare Krishna. What is his name?
Thank God I didn't
Sundar
cut the
Nitai.
other cucumber.
His name is Sundar Nitai.
Sundar Nitai. Hare Krishna.
This one?
Sachi Prema Mataji, you are
You said not.
unmuted. Can
Now
you mute
afterwards can add.
yourself? Sachi Prema Mataji, can you mute yourself? No, I cannot. Okay, fine. Yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hari Bol. Hare Krishna Mataji. Jai Ho. Thank you so much. So I will see you. Those who are in Kuala Lumpur, hopefully I will see you at the temple and on Sunday. Otherwise, anyway, I'll meet you on Saturday where we'll discuss Ram. Okay. Have a good evening. Thank you.